Yeah, so if the stick tends to bow you forwards, then just fight it. I mean, just a little bit. So just feel the part of your back. So it's sort of the mid-back that needs to come in a little bit to get your head arching back slightly against the stick. And then just turning, just slowly letting it build up. Just trying to get the right tone in the body. I was reading an interview with a poet that I like. And his poetry is very sort of prosaic. And the interviewer was saying, how do you know when it's poetry? How do you know when it's poetry that's coming out of you and not just prose? And he said, because when it's poetry, the body has a certain tone. So it's like spirit invests the body with a certain tension, and that's what we're looking for all the time, a responsive tension. The way Dave does it, Dave's gone to see his dad, by the way, sends his apologies. So, he has it sort of down his back like this, yeah. So if you can just let it slip down a little bit, then it will actually press against that place in the spine, which needs to come in a little bit. So just how far down can you get it? Can you get it right in the crook of the elbows? So the place in the back that the stick is sort of pressing into, place in the spine, that's very much associated with the thymus. So if those vertebrae where the stick is now sort of protrude back at all, then the thymus will tend to drop. And the person tends to be what John would call locked in the morass of depression. It's like they can't escape their own stickiness. Yeah? So here I just want the thymus. The thymus should feel like it's lifting, like there's an energy that's always lifting out of it. And that's joy. That energy is what we call joy. Now let's just tip it. So the end of the stick that is descending would like it to pull in towards the hip as well as just drop. So it's not just dropping, it's coming in. Yeah, and if you can actually get it to actually hit the floor, then just push into the floor. So so the muscles on that side are pulling even more to actually press the stick into the ground, like you're trying to dig a hole in the ground with the end of the stick. Yeah, so you push the stick into the ground and you feel the ground coming up the stick and into your back. And now let's just try the pulling and the pushing. So now I'm just trying to pull my hands apart, just gently. All the time, I'm looking for equilibrium. So I am pulling my hands apart, but the stick is pulling my hands together. And together, those two forces, my force and the stick's force, is creating a stationary equilibrium. So I want to be really aware of both forces, my own effort, which is trying to do this, and the stick, which is actually trying to pull my hands towards each other. And the more I pull, the more effort I put in, the more the stick pulls as well. So you can sort of play with it. This is what John was doing all the time. Whenever he was sitting down or, in his spare time, he was always working, in the sense that he was always setting up tense machines, like machines of tension that work both ways. Yeah. So my effort is actually making this happen. Yeah. But the stick's effort is actually making this happen. And so I just want to really feel both of those. And I can just switch my mind. I can move my mind from my own effort to the stick and back again. Yeah. And so it's very elastic. So if I was doing this, if this stick was elastic, then I would pull it and then the stick would pull me back and I could just hold it there. And if I was to put any more effort into it, then the stick would stretch a little bit more. And so when it's really elastic, then there's always movement. So this is what I want to feel. I want to feel as though the stick is sort of rubbery or elastic. It can give, but it always pulls back. Now, so it's that play between your own effort, that you are doing something and that thing is doing you. So this is what we want to feel and just really wake up to. And then there's always movement. It's always, it's always encouraging movement. And now just press the hands together. So now the stick is trying to push you out. It's this, the stick is now doing to you what you were previously doing to the stick. Yeah, so this is what we do when, like when we walk, when we move around. So the force that I'm applying is always in the opposite direction to my movement. So if I want to move forwards, I have to push the ground backwards. So there, my mind is very much with the secondary action, which is the action of the ground on me, my movement forward. So I'm not aware of the fact that I am pushing backwards unless I look at it and think about it. So we know the ground won't move. It's us that's going to move. And so we tend to be with that. We tend to be with the effect. And then just pulling once more. And just really sort of just relax into it, reducing your effort so that you can foreground what the stick is doing to you rather than what you're doing to the stick. And then just press the stick, push the hands towards each other. Right. Okay, now let's just finish these with just where we drop it behind the back. Okay, so let's stand. Back to riding horse. Yeah, so just really a big horse, one of those Shire horses, you know. So this is really opening up. Your ability to sink very much depends upon the openness in the hips. And so when we're in riding horse, it almost feels like these joints are dislocating. And just feeling, you know, so when we do something, especially something that adjusts the posture, we really want to just try and feel the sort of mind, the different sort of mind we would have to have for that to be a natural thing, a natural adjustment. So the thing about the noisy mind, the thing about our normal minds, yeah, is that they're quite small compared to the big mind. And so, you know, John always used to say it's a bit like, you know, like in Blakeney, Swan House. You know, we had this house that was like, I can't remember how many thousand square meters it was, but it was a lot. And yeah, John just lived in 2 rooms, yeah. And the rest of the house was just basically deserted. And so what we want, so this is what it's like with the mind, you know, we've got this big mansion of a mind and we just live in 1 or 2 rooms, yeah. So when you're in a posture like this, you know, what sort of fierce attention do you need to bring to just almost force yourself to swell and occupy your body? And the reason we only live in a small part of ourselves is because that's all we need, yeah, to actually live in civilized, domesticated society. You know, so it's why I always say, you know, we're much poorer nowadays than we've ever been. You know, we've got money, we've got disposable income, we can go on holiday and do all that shit. But in terms of the aliveness of our lives, yeah, so if real enlightenment, if real spirit actually struck a person, that would be the end of them. They'd be dead. So just feeling, you know, so if I want this to really open up here, then there has to be a real spread across the sacrum. And that just inside, something in me just has to get really fierce and just say, fuck it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. Because you can be relaxing until the cows come home and it just won't happen. So I'm relaxing, but just really relaxing into a very challenging openness and fullness. Yeah. Growth isn't opening. Growth isn't unfurling into openness. Okay. And now just turning. Turning in order to produce a figure of 8. Yeah, so when we open here, when we really get into a good riding horse, then you're being pushed into the outside edges of your feet all the time. And these outside edges are naturally curved like this, yeah? So they're like the sides of a circle, big circle. So I want to feel that when I come into my heel, I naturally roll around this outside edge. And then that just tosses me back into this heel, which I can then roll around that outside edge. And just be careful that when you're going around one, you don't lose the other. So don't let this knee collapse in. So just really just using the shape of the body. And just feel the action of the two hands. So you've got the hand that's on the same side of the body that you're going around that foot. So this hand tends to get thrown out and up. So you can think of that as taking your wing, which is coming out of your shoulder blade and hanging down behind you like a big angel's wing, taking that out and furling it around. Yeah? And then this now becomes the inside hand of this foot. Yeah, this is the outside hand. So here what's happening is I'm coming into this point here, this point in the inguinal fold. So if you put your fingers there, you can feel your aorta, you can feel the artery pumping. So you're coming in there, and it's as though you're going inside, but around the bone, around the hip joint, as this one comes up and out with the wing, with its wing. So you're picking up the wing with my right hand, with this hand, and then I'm bringing that into this point and letting it wrap around this hip joint as this one goes out. So it's quite, you can do it, and we can, all of these exercises can be done in a million ways, yeah. But this is just really keeping it quite tight. So keeping not letting it leak too much. So it goes out, but it does come back and it connects to the opposite leg. So something in my mind has to open up to let this, it's like a sort of hole or a pocket here that opens up so that my hand can really feel like it's going in. So it's like you have like an outside track and an inside track. The outside track is happening at the level of your shoulders, and the inside track is happening at the level of your hips. All the time, keeping the lid on the pressure cooker, sinking. Yeah, so we just set up exercises that are difficult, not physically difficult necessarily, but that just require real concentration. Otherwise, something snaps and the energy leaks. So there's just no room for your mind to be noisy, for you to take a break and think to yourself, tell yourself how wonderful you are, or how hurt you've been. Have a good grumble. I used to have a friend here. We used to go to the pub. There's an English pub sort of in Kfar Saba, about half an hour's drive away. And we used to go there. It was actually good, it was. But another friend of his came, and the friend was saying how, he's helping his dad. And Sagi said, but you hate your dad. Your dad used to beat the shit out of you when you were little. And this guy just said, yes, Sagi, that was 40 years ago. We move on. We change. Yeah. So this is the thing. It's like somehow giving up one's reliance on the ego so that you can change. Yeah, so that is the revolutionary act. That is overthrowing the old, rotten, corrupt regime. Yeah, so as this side opens up, you have to keep your mind on both figures of 8. The big one that's going out and the little one that's looping around the hip. Otherwise, you won't be able to sustain the equilibrium. Just bring it back. Again, this should feel really open now. Yeah, so we put ourselves in a posture, and then we just try and relax so that the mind will slowly become the mind of this posture. So this is why it needs patience and time. It's what John used to call the process of internalization. So the revolutionary thrust in Tai Chi is the same with any spiritual work, just trying to overthrow the ego, trying to let the ego crumble and tumble. And then the radical act is just coming back to first principle, really, coming back to the root. The instruction that embodies that is mind in the Danchen. So just bringing the part of you that is indulgent and out of control under some sort of disciplined containment here. So the mind, the noisy, chatty mind. Only when the mind comes under control will the world of energy open up. So the Danchen is toned. It's pulling in all the time. And that enables your energy to billow, to come out and swell around you like a big aura. And just be with the equilibrium. So instead of the mind chatting to itself, so in order to chat, see, you know what it's like when you, I had a student once, they left the class, they drove home. And then I get a phone call saying, I've just got home and I have absolutely no recollection of any part of the journey. My mind was just wandering so much. Yeah. So you know what it's like when your mind wanders, you're no longer there. So the only reason it can wander is because you're safe. You don't have to worry about what you're doing. Yeah. You can go into automatic. Yeah. So that's the enemy, really. That sort of absence. Yeah. And so what the mind does, instead of chatting to itself, it's just scanning the equilibrium. So I'm feeling the ground, I'm feeling gravity pulling me down. And if I just relax any more to that, then I will just slowly move down, yeah? And then I feel the ground pushing up against that. A bit very much like the stick, yeah? When we were pulling and pushing the stick. I can either be with my own effort or with the stick's effort. So my mind wanders, but it wanders the system. It scans the system. So this is the most important thing, really, because it all starts with this. Without mind under some sort of control, it's just like everything else you do. And now just coming into the earth. So we want to feel in Taoism is always, itself is revolutionary, because what it's doing all the time is saying, okay, if you like to look at the New Testament, so just reading about Jesus, and it's interesting because when the disciples will come to Jesus and say, what do you think about this? And he'll say, well, tell me what you think about it first. So they'll tell him. And then he'll say, well, actually, it's the opposite. And so, yeah, so what appears, the appearance is hiding the reality. And so the earth has this appearance of being sort of firm and hard and stable and immovable, especially when you're in a room that has a floor like this. Yeah. Okay, so that's obvious that we know that. But now we just need to just relax and soften so that its other aspect can become revealed. So there's always something that's concealed, and it's the concealed that is the important part, the internal part, the esoteric part, the hidden part. And that is the earth as a sink. It's sucking me down. And it's not just gravity. There's obviously the force of gravity as defined by and described by Newton. That's just like an impersonal force that just operates on everything. But there's something about the ground that's almost like wanting to open up and just let you disappear into it. Let you become concealed within it, yeah? So that's the bit we want to open up to, the ground as a sink. And you think about, when the water goes down the plug hole, there's quite a suction. So if you can open up to the ground in that capacity, then that capacity of the ground will open up to you in the same way, like with the stick, if I pull the stick and just really be aware of what I'm doing, then I can really feel the stick pulling me back. And so the ground is draining me. And it's through the heels. It's largely through the heels. So we want to feel the heels as though the heels are just sinking into this ground. The ground is soft. The ground has a softness. So from my min-meng down, it's really just lengthening, stretching. The sacrum is heavy. Everything is elastic. It's like my spine is like an elastic pendulum. It's got a boing in it, like an echo. Okay, now just coming forwards onto the toes now. Just keep the sacrum just heavily hanging down. Keep that feeling of stretchy elasticity in the spine. And just feel yourself just becoming infused with this light brightness from the ground. And so when you allow yourself to be sucked down into the abyss, into the abyssal nature of the earth, then the earth will release a fine energy. And then just rocking back, but one heel at a time. So just imagine you're just projecting your heel backwards. So to get the heel to go back, there's a sense that it goes up a little bit as well. You're sort of doing this, yeah? And so for that, your tail has to stick out a little bit. So you direct the heel with your tail. So my tail goes back a little bit, and then I roll the tail under, and that will cut my heel under. And then I send this one back, and then under. So now I'm back in my heels, but a little bit differently because I've got there by extending the heels. So it's not now just a sort of passive heaviness. It's more like got a reach to it, but a reach backwards and under. So we just want to really wake up the tail. Just allow it to point and have a life of its own, and really feel how the tail is very much responsible for your emotions. So it normally works the other way, when we're miserable and down and feeling sorry for ourselves, then our tail hangs between our legs, like a dog. And when we're happy and bright and everything's going our way, then the tail tends to stick back a bit, or like a cat or a dog where the tail sticks up in the air. So what we would like is not, rather than being a victim of our moods, to be in control of our moods. Yeah. And so simply by changing where the tail is pointing, I can change the way I feel. I can change my mood. Okay, let's just come onto the toes again. Yeah, so you're still sinking. You've still got the heavy sacrum. It's just that you've come into a different energy. The energy that's rising from the ground. The joy, the brightness that's rising from the ground. And it does it all the time. It's doing it all the time. It's just that now this is your little bit. This is the bit that's for you. So just feel the tone that you need to maintain in your belly to keep your tail under some control. And now let's rock back again, but now the other heel going down first. So this one. So again, my tail goes back a little bit, and that's like a brightness. It's like my eyes widen. And then it cuts under. So this is me sort of just becoming a little bit more ruthless. And then this tail goes out. So this is like entering. It's like entering the space behind you and then digging in and coming under. So your heels, they're really sort of digging in all the time, but sort of cutting under the foot. You're just making this circuit. So this circuit is just really important. So it's happening in the whole body, now in the heels. So I'm sinking down my back into the heels, and that's encouraging this rising brightness to come up in front of me. But then also in my sacral area. And so, think of those early short form days. So I was always puzzled, really, that every class, John would make a point of just saying, okay, hold the posture. And he'd just come round and basically adjust everyone's posture. And the main thing that he would do is just place his hand on the sacrum. Place his hand on your lower back or your sacrum. And I always thought, oh shit, it's in the wrong place. And so I had to be trying to move it. And he'd say, no, just relax. And it's only when I started doing that to my own students, I realized basically what it is you're just wanting the student just to relax into your hand rather than them feeling, oh, he's trying to push me into a different position, and then pulling their hand away from you, pulling their back away from you. What I require from my student is that they relax back into my hand so that then my hand can move us both forwards a little bit. Because it has to be me that adjusts their posture, not them. Because if they do it, they'll get it wrong. They'll use tension. And this is the thing, it's very difficult to put yourself in the correct posture. You can get there by doing an exercise that will take you there. But to just stand and say, okay, I'm going to get my bum in, because all you'll do is just get tense. And so just remember the teacher's hand on your sacrum and just giving it permission just to relax. and drop. And so there's a sense that the belly pulls in and then it drops down the sacrum in the inside. So there's this circuit going on all the time in the belly. So coming like in through the navel and then back, dropping down the inner surface of the sacrum, which is concave, and just being thrown back up by the tail and the end of the sacrum and the tail. So there's this beautiful revolution, circulation going on inside the belly. And the same in the heart. So like in through the thymus, back, dropping down the spine a little bit, and then just swinging forwards into eros, into the lower heart, and then back up. Yeah, so all of these centers revolve. Yeah, so eros is the spirit of connection. And now just feeling the 2 feet. So now the equilibrium between the left and the right. Yeah, so just imagine you've got like each foot is sort of on its own separate trampoline. You've got these 2 little trampolines, you know, not really bouncy, otherwise, you know, you're going to fall over. But, you know, you can play with the feet. You can push one foot into the ground, yeah. And it just produces this play between the feet. And then we just turn with it. So now pushing into those 2 trampolines so that the trampolines will actually push you up, and then you just stay sunk. So that up becomes a twist. And just keep it going. Like you just have to keep pushing. Even when it stops, you don't stop the effort. You keep the effort going. You've just reached equilibrium. And then you just pull the feet towards each other, like you're trying to pull them away from the trampolines. And you'll come back to the front. And then again, just pressing into the ground. Yeah, so with your mind, with your imagination, you can make the ground rubbery. You can actually produce these 2 trampolines just with your imagination, and then you can really feel it. So here I'm just lightening the load. And then here I'm pushing into the ground. And that's producing a twist, a turn. And then I'm lightening. Yeah, so it's like it's really quite intense. And you can only generate that sort of intensity when your mind is quiet. Because the whole idea of the noisy mind is that it's actually forcing you to leak so that reality cannot open up to you. Because all you see is the world that you have created. So here I want to become intense, and that will encourage the world to become intense with me. and then back to riding horse. Yeah, so whenever we engage in anything, any activity, then the mind endeavors to understand. And it only does that so that it can do what it's doing more easily, without energy and without spirit, with knowledge instead, with habit. So that's what we're trying to work against all the time. So, what in Tai Chi they call beginner's mind. So never becoming expert. As soon as you think you know what you're doing, it opens up a bit more and suddenly you realize, oh shit, I've got no idea. Yeah. And so instead of gaining sort of expertise and letting that lock you in your expert box, you just need the mind that's going to use that energy that you're gathering to actually break even more boundaries and barriers and actually expand even more into the openness, into the void, into the abyss. So beneath you, there's the abyss of the earth that's sucking you down. Above you, there's the vault of the heavens that's actually drawing you up. Yeah. So you're being torn to pieces. This is the feeling, rather than reality battering you, it's actually tugging you. It's trying to tear you into little bits. Yeah. This is why you need the danchen. So the danchen is just this contractive draw here that's just holding you together in the midst of this onslaught of pulling forces. So that's what we're terrified of here. So that's, everything that we do in our lives is geared to actually stepping back from reality and instituting a well-behaved world in its place. And this is why people are depressed, because the world that you can create is always going to be so poor compared to the one that nature is presenting you. And so depression is just boredom, really. People are just bored. They're bored with their middle-class lives, their safety, their security, their lack of spirit, is what John would say, their shitlessness. Okay. So now let's just try a little bit in bow and arrow, but with 1 foot forwards, but with the front foot angled in a little bit. So when I come into the front foot, I really want to feel, again, like my passage is around from the heel around the outside edge of the foot. And then again, when I come here, yeah, so when we move backwards and forwards, we can really attend to, what John used to call the cardinal sin of Tai Chi, sticking your bum out. And so what tends to happen when we come into the front foot, we tend to sort of roll over and settle on top of it. And that will always make the bum stick back a little bit. And so when you come into the front foot, you're trying your best to keep your body as far back as possible. So the sense is that your sacrum and your tailbone are cutting underneath the heel. So the feeling is that as you come forwards, you're coming into the front foot from underneath it. And then when I go back, it's the same thing. It's just more difficult to feel. So my tail, my little tail is splits into two, one for each leg. So this side is cutting under. So for that, this really needs to remain flat so that the tail can point like this. If my bum sticks out, then my tail is going to point backwards. Yeah. So as I come forwards, this tail is coming under. But this tail is still projecting and trying to point at this heel. So now I just pull with this foot and that will lower me into it. It's really difficult on the legs. Yeah, I was really struck by that Dong, what's his name? Dong something. You know, in his book, and he just basically says, you know, when you're in the front foot, you're 50-50. You're not 70-30 or 80-20, as some people say, or William Chen says 100-0. You know? And same with like Sun style. You know, so when they bring the back foot up like this, so they can get everything into the front foot. But here we just want to really feel that sense that you're undermining, you're cutting under the physical. So my energy is undermining the physical, is undermining the body. So again, it's just figures of eights. You can use the figure of eight to bring continuity into the exercise. Yes, if my mind wanders, then I just lose the pressure. Yeah, the top blows off the pressure cooker and I just come up and then I'm just on top of the leg rather than in it or in the ground under it, which is what I'd like. And again, just keeping these hip joints so open, it almost feels like you could actually take the leg off. Yeah, so there's a sense that as my body is coming forwards, it's being directed by my tail, really, by my tail cutting under. This leg is trying its best to actually keep me back. So again, it's that balance of two opposing forces. So now it's as though my leg doesn't really belong to me. So it's a bit like the stick that I was pushing and pulling. So as I'm coming forward and I'm pushing myself into the stick of the leg is trying to drive back and I'm just with that. I need both sides of the coin. I need both forces. Yeah, so your sacrum and your tail are like the mouth of the digger. You're scooping the ground all the time. So you're digging underneath the foot. And now just finally, let's just try. Yeah, so it's all well and good getting under the foot, but if you need to bring the other foot up, then it's just a bit more difficult, yeah? So now just stepping. So just lifting the foot and putting the heel down. So I want to put the heel down and have the leg really straight, like these muscles are really tense to straighten the leg. So this sense that placing the foot drives your body backwards, rather than putting the foot down and my body's already in it, which we know that's wrong in Tai Chi terms. When I place the foot, it's driving me down and back in order to start this circuit. So I'm being driven like this by the placement of my foot. And then I can just keep that going in order to bring the other leg up. So I place the heel, I just tighten these muscles so that this is pushed back a little bit by the straightening and lengthening of the leg. And then I just let that sink down because it will, so what goes back will naturally drop down. Same as what comes forwards will naturally come up. So I put the heel down and it drives me down, and then I can just come with that. So I'm getting under, and then this is the difficult bit. It's just bringing that foot up without doing this, without coming on top of the foot by getting underneath it. So let's just try, so here, straightening the leg, and that drives the top here back and down. I just go with that and let it bring me forwards. And then I just pop up with this heel, this toe, these toes, yeah. Again, just retrieving the relaxed sacrum hanging down, because that will tend to stick the bum out slightly. Nothing's ever perfect. And then just stepping with this one. Again, you place the heel, and then I sort of use the ground a little bit. Straightening the leg, this pushes back and rolls down. And then I just let that bring me forwards until I'm under the foot. And then, this has to pop up. It's really difficult. It's great. Something in you has to love difficulty, has to love the impossible. Otherwise, as John would say, this work isn't for you. Pressing this down, I come under, and I've just got to see it in my mind. So as I'm coming forwards, this is still rolling down. I'm still sinking all the way. You know, John always used to say, you lift this foot off the ground by bending this leg, not by straightening it. But if you actually look at what you do, you realize even though you're sinking, even though your body is sinking, inside something in you is straightening. So that's what we're just trying to look at and sort of counter a little bit. So I'm getting underneath the foot. So at that point of this foot coming up, I don't chicken out and just get tense. Heel, straightening the leg, let that drop you down the back like this, really into this heel, or even behind it, and then getting underneath. And this has to keep dropping so that I can bring the energy up here. So it's just part of the circle, and then here and under. Just one more. Let's go the other foot first. You really straightening the leg, and you can sort of straighten and relax, straighten and relax. Use it like a pump to actually get this circuit going first. Yeah. So there's this circuit going, and then you just join it at some point. So I pump, I pump, I pump, and there's this circuit established, and then I just let it draw me, let it pull me under. Now let's just finish just by squatting, because it it all depends upon strength in the legs, the mind being able to just stay on the job, and this part of the back, the lower back, so from the min meng down, just being really open and flexible so that the sacrum can really roll, the tail can pull under, it can stick back, it can point to the sides. So just liberate, what I call liberating the tail. And, if your tail is really free, then how does that affect your mind and your spirit? So it's basically a sense of humor. I think that's, John, he never really mentioned it. He did actually. He would mention the tail, but he'd never say anything about it really, or about how to work on it. But I think it's just like, if you want to work on a sense of humor, so he always used to say to me, you need to develop a sense of humor. And that's really, for me now, is just tail work. It's just working on the tail. Because it has like a life of its own, and it lives in a world that's different than the normal one. And so it's always, so what it's proposing all the time is like something that unsettles the normal world you live in. It's the same way that humor does. And that's really, that's what we're looking for, really. We're looking to usurp the ego. So ego is the individual. The bourgeoisie is the class of egos, the set of egos. And capitalism is the machine of ego. So same phenomenon, just different scales. Let's just bring it to riding horse one last time. And just feeling the dantian. Yeah. So we want to bring the foot up into a tension posture by just tightening here. So I pull the belly in and I let that suck my leg up. And then I want to straighten the legs, but really by driving my heels down. So again, feeling like your body is falling backwards, is behind. So you've straightened up because you've really gone down into the ground, rather than because you've pushed against the ground. Yeah, so to come up away from the ground, another part of me must have really gone down into it. Otherwise, at that point of straightening my legs, I've lost the equilibrium.